fellow classmates and professors, and whoever happens to stumble upon this video. This is all about my aha moments in my Portfolio 5 block. Although I'm going to replace aha with eureka because too many vowels doesn't work in my Midwestern accent. I liken these last few months to what I would consider web and app design bootcamp. This is the sort of talk about interactivity that gets me really excited about design. It's sort of a new frontier. My two favorite eureka moments from these last few months have been learning all about user patterns in websites, as well as meeting my new bestie. Her name is Adobe XD and she likes purple. Let's get started. First up, user patterns on websites. I have found that as a designer, I can try to get a little too creative with my designs. Without direction, designers can go full Ragnarok, like an actor without a script. We all know improv can be very uncomfortable. This is where a good lesson on user patterns is helpful when it comes to creating for the real user. Don Norman wrote in his book, The Design of Everyday Things, this quote, "Design is really an act of communication, which means having a deep understanding of the person with whom the designer is communicating." This means we need to really look at our audiences to know their needs and also what they're comfortable with and how they use the product. So let's look at some websites that kind of show this user pattern. So users like to come to a website, understand how it works. Humans like patterns, they like repetition, they like what they're comfortable with. So the first website I've pulled up is those awkward family photos. It has the logo right up front so you know where you are. It also has a very clean, sort of organized navigation right at the top. So right when the user gets here, they immediately are satisfying the needs for which they came here. And mostly that would probably be hilarious photos and videos. We also have very clear call to action. You can see on the shop that they've found a way to monetize the website. You can also submit a photo. You can see the search right here, which is becoming more necessary on websites as they have blogs and are getting bigger. There's also what I think is really smart. They have this extra hamburger navigation here, and hamburger just refers to this icon right here. So you can see that they needed some extra stuff in their navigation, but they didn't want to muddy up the clearness of how their navigation works. So they put all the extra stuff in this little hamburger. So you've got the about, the contact, basically pages that their users probably don't use often, but it's good to have them right here in case someone is. So you can also see they have their, this is hilarious, and they have their subscribe, which a lot of websites are doing now. It's just a great way to stay in contact and remind your users that you're still here. You notice here, very clear, another way to engage your users is putting these social media links right here. So it's just a way to continue communication and create a relationship and keep the user coming back for more. But we're talking about users right now, so we talked about the clear navigation. This is so important in websites that it's well organized and that people can find their way around. They don't want to have to dig through information when they come to a website. So let's give a little example here. Right here, clearly, photos, family. Let's do grandpas because grandpas are my favorite. Grandpas. So perfect. I'm right in the category I want. And we can look at hilarious pictures of grandpas. That is very so grandpa. So you can see that the site is very easy to navigate, and that is one of the key points that we learned about userness. So I have this website here, and it's just got a very fun design that you don't see very often, as well as a very clear call to action. When it comes to websites and users, we want that call to action to be right there above the fold. Here's what you're here for. So you can see that there's a nice hover effect right on this bright pink button. I'm going to click it to see what happens. Oh, that's kind of fun. Let's do it again. You can see how this website knew what it was here for. It was here to show people totally useless websites. It also has a super clear call to action that you just want to press. Oh boy. I don't like this one. That hurts the eyes. So that's kind of the very basics of usability. Clear navigation, clear call to actions, and allowing your user to quickly do what they came to do. Another quote from Don Norman in his The Design of Everyday Things book is, rule of thumb, if you think something is clever and sophisticated, beware, it is probably self-indulgence. This really relates to websites and apps because, as I explained, we have that clear navigation at the top, the call to action buttons. This is what our users are comfortable with, and it's what works really well. So, as the old saying goes, there's not necessarily a lot of incentive, nor should there be, to reinvent the wheel. So, as I stated at the beginning of the video, my second eureka moment was learning how to use Adobe XD. Like many designers, when I started creating websites, I was creating them in Photoshop. Photoshop is great for making digital art, but now that I know how to use XD, I realize how XD is so much better when you're making websites. When using Photoshop, it's easy to get lost in all the tools. It's hard to resist adding color and images when all you need to be figuring out when you're first designing a website is how it's going to function. So you can see that XD, these are the only tools you have. You have your pointer, your shapes, a pen tool, type, your new layer, and a search. So I find it allows things to go a lot faster. Actually, I found XD loads a lot faster than Photoshop. Photoshop just has a lot going on. And no hate on Photoshop, we go way back, but XD is just so seamless and lovely when creating front-end designs. And mostly, I mean, wireframes. That's where we always need to start. So let me show you kind of what a wireframe looks like in XD. So here's this one. This is the very, very beginning of the website that I was just showing you. This is where it started off as a wireframe. As I said, one of the things that I learned at Full Sail was that when we're just designing and figuring out kind of how a design will work and function, it's best to do it in black and white. So you can see that how simple XD really makes it to add text, add shapes. You're all on the grid, so you don't really need the fancy tools that you have in Photoshop. It just makes it so easy. And one of my favorite things about XD is if you want to add a photo, all you have to do, I don't know what this is drag and drop it right in there. That's not a great example, but you can see how easy it is to just pop photos in. And it makes it so much faster to create these front-end designs for apps and websites. Another one of my favorite things about XD is we have this 960 web grid right here. So easy. I didn't find this in Photoshop. You have to build your own when you're using Photoshop. But when you're in XD, you can just go to View and Hide Grid Layout. And then you go back, Show Grid. And this just makes, that's just one less thing you have to do, is make this grid or pull in this grid. I know before I had to save it out and then I had to pull it into Photoshop. Now it's just right here. You can also have the square grid, which I don't use really that much, because one of the other great things about XD is that it shows the padding you have between things. So if I kind of start moving this around, you'll see the pink lines and they have numbers with them. So you've got your 16 pixel padding right here. You've got the 291 padding right here. And this just all allows you to line things up a lot easier. And I can, when I'm moving things around, I want them to be consistent like that. Another great thing about XD making it so easy to design your websites and apps in grayscale is that you can make sure that your contrast is good on everything. Where if you design it in color right away, you can start to lose the basics of contrast, which we learned it's the contrast that will really help people with disabilities, especially color blindness. When you're designing websites, you really have to think about the people who will be using them, and perhaps they are colorblind. So it's important that we just keep this simple contrast here. So thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it as beneficial as I have found the last few months. I have definitely found my love when it comes to design. It's definitely digital, it's definitely interactive, it's definitely talking about how we can make our designs better for the user. So thank you for all your hard work the last 3 months, and I will see you all in the next class.